So I thought what we would do today is talk with a specialist when it comes to eating, and that's the Cooking Cardiologist. Dr. Richard Collins is the author of the book, The Cooking Cardiologist. He's the director of the Heart Disease Reversal and Wellness Program at Elegant Health Institute in Omaha. It's formerly Emmanuel Hospital in Omaha. And Dr. Collins, welcome to WHO Radio.
Good to be here. Good morning.
You're not too far away from us. We're over in Des Moines, and you, of course, have done quite a bit of work, groundbreaking work with Dr. Dean Ornish with the specialized program that he has, so we'll want to talk about that a little bit later. But let's start out by finding out why in the world a guy who's so busy as a doctor would want to write a book about the Cooking Cardiologist.
Well, Steve, actually, I was an invasive cardiologist about 5 years ago, putting all those balloons and catheters in people, and 5 years ago I became a preventative cardiologist, and I actually hung up my balloons and have been showing people how to not need a cardiologist, actually.
What do you mean a preventative cardiologist?
Well, I think really what happens in America, most doctors are taught to be firefighters rather than forest rangers. And in this role, my objective is to reverse heart disease, show you how to stop it dead in its tracks, and if you do have blockages in your arteries, to get them to reverse and stabilize and even get smaller, the plaque. And you can do that by lifestyle change. It requires a major jump, but it's not that difficult.
Yeah. You call it lifestyle modification, right?
Right. And we're not talking only diet here, but of course stress management, proper exercise, taking care of some feelings within, and isolation, loneliness, depression. But all of these things, when you put them together, are very synergistic and really can beat heart disease.
Now, I always enjoy ribbing doctors a little bit. My wife's a nurse, and my brother-in-law is a doctor, and so I always think it's funny when I hear a doctor talk about stress management or diet or exercise, since doctors don't sometimes follow their own advice in those areas. Very high-stress job that you have. Probably not a lot of opportunities to exercise for someone who's working 14, 16-hour days, and yet all of us have to do that, don't we?
It's really a good idea. You know, that's good advice. Sometimes doctors make the worst patients. You know, I often heard, a plumber has the worst plumbing in his own house. But, I really do make an effort to follow this lifestyle. In fact, 5 years ago, before putting a patient on this type of program, I decided to do it myself and walk in their shoes. And that was 5 years ago, and I've been on this diet since, only because I feel better. I lost about 20 pounds. I have more energy. And that really what keeps me on the program.
And does your entire family follow this then?
Well, my wife does. Actually, I have an older daughter who she claims she was a vegetarian before I was. But actually, I have two other daughters, and they're kind of up and down on it. We let them choose whatever they want as far as diet. Try to give them some guidelines, though, as they get older.
Now, this book isn't just a lifestyle book. It's basically a cookbook. I mean, basically, you're giving us recipes. Are these things you've actually cooked and come up with?
That's right. Actually, about 5 years ago, I decided. I told my wife one day after doing this, I said, I'm going to move my workshop from the basement. Do you mind if I move into the kitchen? And actually, food has had more of awareness now, and it's a lot more fun than I ever realized. And so I started to work with plant protein, started to look with optional things in recipes, and came up with a surprising conclusion. You don't have to give up what you love to eat. Just change your recipe. And it is that easy. We can have pizza, and we can have pasta, and deviled eggs, and meatloaf and mashed potatoes without cholesterol and absolutely no fat, and still defy the senses. You really would think that this was actually the real stuff.
Okay, let's talk about some of those things you just mentioned. You mentioned pizza, and of course pizza is very high in fat, isn't it, with all the cheese on it?
Absolutely. So what I do is when I order a pizza, I'll get a pizza with a thin crust because that has a little bit less fat. I ask for extra tomato sauce, and most of the marinara sauces are fat-free. I get all the vegetables they can and put on there, and I ask for it half-baked. Then I bring it home, and what I do is I finish it off. Now, I put fat-free cheese on there, and they say, well, you can't get that to melt. Yes, you can, and all you do is rehydrate it with either skim milk or vegetable broth, and let it sit in a bowl or in a saucer for about a minute, and then just drain it off and put it on your product. It will ooze all over the place.
But what does it taste like?
It tastes just as fine, just as regular cheese does.
We tried fat-free cheese once, and it just didn't taste the same.
What happens is that it dries out too much,
right?
And then you lose the flavor, and that's what oil does. Oil allows the flavor to hold in on the palate. So when you rehydrate things, when you add fluids and hydration to it, really the flavors come back. That's a tendency. What happens is people forget this, that when they start to cook without oil or reduce the oil in their diet, the first thing is, foods just don't taste as good. But actually, if you do that little trick and hydrate things up, the taste is right there, and it's fabulous.
We're talking with Dr. Richard Collins. He's the author of The Cooking Cardiologist. You're listening to News Radio 1040 WHO. It's Winzenburg on the weekend. And Dr. Collins is from Omaha, and I heard you mention meatloaf, but I thought you also just said you were a vegetarian.
Well, I tell you what, we have a meatloaf. Of course, there's only 2 meatloaf recipes in the world, yours and mine. But actually, our meatloaf is, quote, it is made with a soy sausage and a soy substitute for meat. And there are a couple of ways you can do that. You can make the dish actually totally vegetarian. And what we do is we start out with using some of the soy meat analogs. And these are the crumbles. You probably have seen them, the sausage crumbles and the hamburger crumbles that you can get. Actually, if you work with those and use your own meatloaf recipe, you'd be surprised how it will be duplicated and, quote, taste just as good. Actually, on page 116 of the cookbook is our oh-so-good meatless loaf. And it starts out with using the Morningstar Farms ground meatless that is thawed. Now, I know in Iowa, of course, you're the sausage capital and pork sausage capital and so forth. But you know what you can do, and it's very easy if you're not a vegetarian. Here's a little trick, and it's beautiful. You know, you can mix some of these ground meatless products with actual sausage and go half and half, and I'll tell you what, you have no idea that you have done that. It is not a fiber as far as adding something that is extending it. Really what it is pure protein as well. So you're getting the best of both worlds, a little bit of soy as well as meat in there.
Now, I
so
know once I tried a meatless lasagna that somebody made, and actually you couldn't even tell there was no meat in it because it just tasted like lasagna.
Yeah.
So if you flavor it properly and have enough ingredients in there, it almost makes you think like you're eating meat.
You know, and that's absolutely right, Steve. I did a interesting thing a couple of years ago on the radio show. I had a challenge. Someone asked me about these soy burgers, and I said, I think I can make a soy burger just as good as you would normally like. And they accepted that challenge, so I went to the station. And I did cook a soy burger right there on the station. And they had it in the hamburger bun. They said, well, it just doesn't taste like the flame-broiled Burger King. And so I brought a flame-broiled broiled Burger King hamburger. And they tasted it, and they said, yeah, sure, this is great. And I said, well, I'll tell you what. I took one of these soy burgers, and I took it to Burger King. A friend of mine owns one of the King restaurants here, and he put it through the broiler, wrapped it up, just like a Burger King. And the interesting thing, it's tasting by association.
That's right.
And,
you think you're eating something like that.
Right.
They did a test a few years ago. I remember I've watched a special where they showed they did a test on puddings, and this has nothing to do with meat, but they had different colored puddings. Ranging from a very dark, rich chocolate color to a lighter brown color to a white vanilla color. And the people tasting it didn't know that all the flavors were the same. There was no actual chocolate in any of the pudding. But they all swore that dark, rich, chocolate-looking pudding had chocolate in it. They thought it was the richest. And so very often we're tricked into our senses thinking that we're eating something when we're really not. They've done that with pop and things like that.
Absolutely. You know, when you look at the order of what we like, it is first, we're very visual, and so we have to see it. The second thing is aroma, and the third thing is texture, and then the last thing is taste. And I don't think a lot of people would have a steak if it had the consistency of pudding. I doubt if people would want to eat it. Texture is so important in our society, and people like meatier things in texture.
Right.
So often that's what happens as we get older. We have to, puree our food. People can't chew, and
Right.
they lose taste, actually.
Our guest is Dr. Richard Collins. The book is called The Cooking Cardiologist. It's available at bookstores. And when we come back, Dr. Collins is going to tell us that the outdoor American grill is the most dangerous cooking apparatus in America, as we continue on News Radio 1040 WHO. I wanted to ask about grilling, but let's get to a caller first. I want to open up our phone lines. If you have a question for Dr. Collins, this is a good time to talk to the doctor without any charge. How's that?
That's right.
Or maybe folks have a heart-healthy cooking recipe that they'd like to share. Do you have a secret that you use in order to cook healthily? Dave, you're up first with our guest. Hi, Dave.
Yes, you're doing a terrific job this morning. I wanted to tell you,
thanks.
narrating, and
Thank you.
I'd love to have one of those books. No, Doctor, I have a quick question to ask you. I was one of the top-ranked senior tennis players in the state of Iowa 3 years ago at age 45. I was in great shape. I developed atrial tachycardia. I have a very good cardiologist. I'm under his care, and currently I'm taking Lanoxin and Verapamil, and am doing better, but it has its side effects, of course, as you're aware of. And would like to get back playing again. My heart seems to be fine. The circulatory system is clear. Mine appears to be electrical in nature. Do you think it would be worth my time to investigate diet change to treat that at all?
Well, Dave, yeah, that's a good question. Diet may not help much the electrical system, but a couple of things come to mind. Magnesium is essential for conduction of the heart. Calcium is essential. Potassium. Those essential minerals are very important. And if you get low on potassium, low on magnesium, that can induce this tachycardia. So it's important to get those up. There are foods that will bother you. The caffeine, that's a no-no. Absolutely no caffeine in your diet.
Dave, do you get a lot of caffeine?
No, I do not. I have maybe 1 cup in the morning, but I've even been told to stop doing that totally.
Yeah, and that would include the chocolates and Excedrin tablets that have caffeine in them. A lot of even over-the-counter preparations have caffeine.
I do perspire very heavily, and I know when I was playing in tournaments, I was always concerned about whether or not I was getting enough, because I could lose 7 pounds of weight, water weight. Anyway, I really appreciate your time, Doctor. I would like to I'm going to try to get your book.
Well, you hold on, Dave. A little bit later, we're going to announce the 3 winners. You make sure to stay tuned to WHO Radio.
Thank you for your time.
And Dave,
sir.
the most important nourishment for a tennis player, remember this, water, water, water.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Okay, thanks for calling, Dave. Patrice, you're up next with Dr. Richard Collins. Hi, Patrice.
Hi. Actually, I am a nurse at Mercy, and I work in the cardiac surgical unit.
Great.
I'm calling because I was hearing about your electrolyte and your diet interested me because I've recently had some problems with arrhythmias, having a lot of PVCs, PACs. I take antihypertensives. I take an ACE inhibitor, and they were talking about switching me to a beta blocker. And what I guess, I've stopped caffeine. I've stopped all those things, increased the water, started taking calcium and multiple vitamins. And it has helped, but I'm wondering if the diet wouldn't help me even more.
Make sure, again, Patricia, that magnesium is up. If you're a nurse, you know that we give magnesium for even ventricular dysrhythmias, and it's essential to have a good magnesium level. Hawthorn berry, supposedly good for the heart, all of those things. But essential nourishments, minerals, all of those things. I have those extra beets myself, and I take 1 magnesium tablet. It seems to sell them right now.
Patrice, tell me about your diet. What do you usually eat? What's the main foods you like to eat?
I'm a vegetarian, for one, so I don't eat any meat.
How about sugars?
No, I'm not a sweet eater. I am sucked into salt and French fries, potatoes. I eat a lot of pasta, so I get sucked in that way. And I know, I shouldn't eat the salty things, but I'm really having a hard time staying away from them.
It really is, but the interesting thing is vegetarian diet does not necessarily mean that you're on a healthy diet.
Exactly right.
Yeah, watch that fat intake. We've noticed that if you fat restrict, it lowers your blood pressure far greater than salt restriction. Mm-hmm. And half of our patients are off of their blood pressure medicines because of the diet change.
So, Dr. Collins, do you have any tips for her? Because she still wants that flavor. Patrice is probably like me. I like the fat taste. I mean, that's why I like like food's made that way. So what do you suggest for her?
Well, if you get rid of the salt, go with natural herbs and spices, and fresh is better, and chop them up. If you can't do that, then get in the whole spice rack and bring out the flavors that way and get off the salt. That's absolutely essential because that'll help your pressure a little bit. But yeah, I think we're not on salt as much as we used to be, and I would encourage you at least less than a 20% fat diet.
Thanks, Patrice.
I don't think I'm there right now. Honestly, I don't.
Thanks, Patrice, for calling. Make sure to stay tuned to WHO Radio. We're going to be giving away 3 copies of the book, The Cooking Cardiologist by Dr. Richard Collins. Andy, you're up next on Winzenburg on the Weekend. Hi, Andy.
Oh.
You have a question or a recipe to share with us?
Well, I just wanted to say I'm involved with the Ornish program down there at Mercy Hospital, and I think it's just fantastic.
So have you changed your lifestyle then?
Oh, you bet.
Tell us what you've done.
Well, I had a heart attack a year ago today, and I had a 99% occlusion. And after I got so I could eat again, I was trying to eat right, like chicken breast and all this. But I was still eating meat and probably some other stuff that wasn't healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone to this class now for 12 weeks, and they share recipes with you that you can taste down there. And everything I had is just fantastic. They got a great cook down there, I guess. But I've dropped 40 pounds.
Wow.
And
so they actually have to teach you how to cook.
Well, most people you wouldn't have to, but I'm not much of a cook.
Well, But Dr. Collins says in the book that essentially when you start to change your diet, you are going to have to change recipes. You've got to flavor things differently, right, Dr. Collins?
That's right, Andy, and God bless you. You're in that program. Actually, Mercy Hospital was, I think, the second or third program in the United States to adopt the Ornish program, and that hospital system has been doing a fabulous job. And Andy, I'm very pleased that you've done that. You've lost 40 pounds. God bless you, and I bet you have a lot more energy, don't you?
Yes, I do, and I wasn't going to call. I would just go listen, but when you said you're going to give a book away, I thought I'd call.
Good for you. Thanks, Andy. And Dr. Collins, you say in your book, the outdoor American grill is the most dangerous cooking apparatus in America. How in the world can that be?
Well, Steve, I think in America we really beat up our food, and we're cooking at very high temperatures. That grill service approaches 600, 700 degrees, and what's happening to our food is we're making them carcinogenic. And we have to bring the temperature down a bit, and we have to be very attentive to what we're doing with our meat products, our chicken, our fish, and so forth. We have to not flame broil anymore, and we have to really watch those little hot dogs for our kids. Avoid blackening those because it really does increase the carcinogens. And the second thing that is with our grill is that if you've seen your neighbor out there grilling, and there's a smoke bomb coming out of his grill.
Yes.
At least he's on a 40% fat diet, but that's
so the more fat, the more smoke. That's what you're saying.
That's right.
And then it's all coming into your yard, and you've got to breathe it in.
That's right. And that smoke is more carcinogenic than cigarettes.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So get upwind from your neighbor and turn down the grill temperature. Cook a little bit longer. Take your time. Don't flame broil. Sometimes you can microwave ahead of time, pre-cook it a little bit, and then just finish it on the grill. Don't beat it up. We also have a meat marinade that, interestingly, was found by a researcher in California to reduce the carcinogens by 95%. Yes. And what it does is you can take your pork or steak or fish, put it in the marinade for about an hour, and put it in the refrigerator and let it soak up. And then go out and grill it, and it's fabulous, and it has a great taste. Very easy to make. It's in the cookbook. You have all the ingredients in your shelf. You just need to mix them up, and it's fabulous.
Let's get back to the phone lines. Nia, you're up next with Dr. Richard Collins from Omaha. Hi, Nia.
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
I do not have a heart problem. I'm in my 80s. I'm losing weight. I'm more on one to make sure I do not have a heart attack. So I do have high cholesterol. So I've been using the Joanne Lund recipes, especially the pies, and share them with friends so that I only eat but 1 or 2 pieces.
So are you trying to get some more advice in terms of preventative?
Yes. I'm an Iowa girl. You have all those recipes, and it's just a way of changing them so that you still have the same flavor.
Okay. So Dr. Collins, how can she keep the flavor in her favorite recipes?
Well, I'll tell you what, the most important thing is watch how you cook things. I think that's the key. Poaching, steaming is real good, and that really keeps the product from drying out.
You're saying avoid frying and cook slowly.
Yeah, right.
Slowly,
right.
Okay.
And then use those natural herbs and spices. I would recommend you might want to consider, because as you get older, you don't get the protein you need, and a little fruit smoothie in the morning with a little bit of soy protein added in there in a powder form is a fabulous way of getting your protein, and doesn't fill you up too much, and you'll be able to maintain your weight and get the necessary protein, because as you get older, you have a tendency not to get that protein in.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much for calling. Stay tuned. We're going to be giving away some copies of the Cooking Cardiologist. Laura, you're up next with Dr. Collins. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
What's your question?
I've been on the Dr. Dean Ornish program with my husband for over a year. He had a heart condition and had 3 stents put in. And we found it to be very successful. We are only allowed 10% fat.
Wow.
So that makes it quite difficult. I've learned a lot of tricks. And one of the things is that I have to bake my own bread now because it's very difficult to find any bakery products in the regular markets that are not made with vegetable oil.
Oh.
And so we substitute yogurt in our bread.
You don't need much either, do you?
No, you don't, not really. And with molasses or sorghum to give it, the dark wheat, a really good flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And then in our cooking, we make sure that we have a lot of legumes because I understand that gives us the protein.
Yeah. That's a good idea, isn't it, Dr. Collins?
Absolutely right, Laura. Thanks for calling in. By the way, the cookbook you'll find very handy because the foreword is by Dean Ornish in there, but the recipes have little icons on them, and the recipe is identified. If it has a little red heart, it meets
Wonderful.
Preventative diet. But if it has a little apple, it meets the Ornish criteria.
Yeah.
And then if it has a little carrot on it, it meets the vegetarian criteria, total vegetarian. So as you skim through the cookbook, you can rapidly look at recipes to see if they meet the Ornish criteria. And many times, as you know, Laura, you can flip a recipe very quickly by just making a few changes.
Yeah,
but I would say
that's
about
what I do.
60% of the recipes in here follow Ornish guidelines.
Thanks, Laura. And Dr. Collins, as I listen to them describe all the mouth-watering things, how in the world do you survive? Because you must not go into just regular restaurants and eat, do you? Because you're so picky in terms of what you can have with this program.
Actually, Steve, it's not too bad at all. You just eat around it, and people, I think, need to at least be aware of foods. And as long as you're aware of foods and what's in them, it's very easy to do that. Some people say, "Where do I go?" I go to Wendy's, and you can make your own salad, and you can start at that little kind of salad bar, pick what you've got, and actually what happens is people end up actually eating my dish.
So you avoid meat, you avoid fat, and you do have a little sugar. I noticed in some of your recipes you do have sugar.
Yes, we do. We have sugar. We have to give it a little bit. Sometimes what happens is that as you cut down on your fat, the sugar has a tendency to rise. The interesting thing, though, even though people even are diabetics who are on the program, even though there's sugar in there, they 50% of them are no longer taking insulin or at least off of their medication.
Interesting.
That has to do a little bit with weight loss and just general more exercise and better lifestyle.
That's right. And stress management as well, probably.
Oh, absolutely.
A big part of this is stress management, and yet when you're changing people's eating habits, that can be stressful in itself, can't it?
Oh, actually, it's really funny. About 3 or 4 years ago, I saw a young woman that came back to the office. I said, Harriet, why did you gain 20 pounds? She said, well, I found the diet so stressful I had to eat. But it's not really that bad because, the thing about it is, and here's what makes this really good, is that you're not giving up what you like to eat. You can continue to eat what you love, and that's the basis of the cookbook. This is not a diet by subtraction. It's a diet by addition.
Yeah. The book is called The Cooking Cardiologist, and Barbara, you're up next. Hi, Barbara.
Yes, hi. Dr. Collins, my husband had a heart attack, a very severe heart attack, about 7 years ago. And since then, the last about 2.5 years ago, had to have a defibrillator pacemaker combination put in. And, of course, we've been watching the low fat, and he's on cholesterol-lowering medication. And we've been hearing so much, even some doctor acquaintances of ours that are on the Atkins diet, and was wondering on the high protein, high fat, low carb. Of course, we know this is something that he can't even consider. But what is the hypothesis of this? To me, it's you're in a you put yourself in a ketosis, a state of ketosis. People are losing weight on this.
Okay, Dr. Collins?
Well, Barbara, that's an interesting point. I'm asked that question a lot. Here's what happens on the Atkins diet. This is a diet that basically you eat animal protein and fat and you give up all your carbs. Well, what happens there in America is that it's about 60%, 70% of our diet is containing carbohydrates. So this is a diet by subtraction. It's not a diet by addition. So people are omitting all of those. Well, what happens then? With only eating protein and fat, your blood turns to acid, you become ketotic, and your appetite falls. Your body says, I cannot eat this stuff. So as a result, you eat less. The weight comes off very quickly, and what's happening is it's going off so fast that what you're digesting is your own muscle and not fat. When you lose weight rapidly, like, for example, we put patients in the hospital and they're not eating or they restrict calories, we're not like a hibernating bear. We do not digest fat first. We digest protein. And so muscle contains about 70% water. So these people jump on the scale and they say, my goodness, I've lost 4 pounds overnight. Well, that's muscle and water and fluid. And so what happens is they get off the diet and it goes back up. Now, here's what happens. Their cholesterol falls. Why? Because of starvation. You have to remember, negative calorie balance will lower anyone's cholesterol, regardless of what you're eating. So those are some dangerous side effects, and if you have kidney disease, this diet, it could be lethal.
Thanks, Barbara, for calling WHO Radio. Dr. Collins, couldn't it just be that for some people they need a different diet than other people? I mean, you think about these old people, 110 years old, sitting in the nursing homes, and they say that they've eaten hamburgers and pork chops and smoked their whole life. And so for some people, they're able to survive on this type of stuff.
Well, and that's right, Steve. Some people have receptors where they take the cholesterol and fat and bang, out it goes, and it just is not put into their arteries. And those are the exceptions than the rule. And you're right, there's not one diet for everyone. And I think it's important that you at least step back, work with your doctor. There are nutritionists available, all of the fine hospitals, and also in Des Moines. And I would recommend people in America to get some careful nutritional counseling, much like they would work with a fitness director or a personal trainer. Once you've done that and you know your disease state, you know what your body needs, then you're going to be able to get the right fuel for it, and that's very important.
Let's go to Scott with Dr. Richard Collins on WHO. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Steve. I enjoy your show and get a lot of information off from it.
Thank you very much.
And this is going to be one right up my alley. Dr. Collins, I'm a 33-year-old man. I'm a paramedic. And the last 2 years, I have, 2 years ago, I went to the emergency room one night, and because I was getting dizzy and lightheaded and sweating, and got there and was hooked up to a heart monitor and found out that I was throwing PVCs pretty bad. And I spent probably 2 hours in the emergency room, and they pretty much went away on their own. And the emergency room doctor, and I consulted with a cardiologist at the time also, and I also talked with my primary care physician, and they're all basically telling me that you're young, it's normal, it happens, don't worry about it, you're not going to die from it.
And now you're worried about it.
And, well, I've always been concerned with it because, to be honest, I live a pretty stressful life. I have a very high-fat diet. My cholesterol has always been within the acceptable range. My LDL and HDL are both come back in the acceptable range.
Do you do much exercising?
Well, I work very hard, and when I'm home, I probably walk maybe 2 nights a week.
Okay, so not a lot of exercise.
Not really a lot of
high
exercise.
Stress, high fat. These are all the things that Dr. Collins is going to tell you you're having trouble with, right, Dr. Collins?
That's absolutely right. And
so the potential is there for trouble.
Yeah, I think so, Scott, and I think your heart is telling you something. These little skips are coming from the lower portion of the ventricle. By themselves, they're not dangerous. In fact, we've learned that if we give you medications to take care of them, they actually become dangerous. So we've learned a lot in the last few years on how to manage these. By themselves, they're really just more of a subjective awareness than anything else. But use that subjective awareness to your advantage. Your heart is trying to tell your mind something. It's trying to tell the mind, hey, slow down. Let's get this thing together. Let's start an exercise program on a daily basis. Scott, you're a typical weekend warrior of the American male out there, where we don't do it during the week. It's rather spotty. The stress drives you up a wall. I can guarantee you're going to have more of these skips if you don't have a good night's sleep. You've got a lot on your mind. You've pushed yourself physically, and you're down.
And reduce the stress, too. That's a big part of it. It's Winzenburg on the Weekend on News Radio 1040 WHO. Dr. Richard Collins finishing up with us today. We're going to give away our 3 copies of the book. I pulled the names out of the hat, and Andy, Dave, and Nia. Those are the 3 to call back in. Dave was the tennis star. Andy had a heart attack 1 year ago today. And Nia also. Those 3, if you call us back at 284-1040, you're going to get copies of the Cooking Cardiologist. And Dr. Collins, tell us where else we can get the book.
Well, it's available, Steve, on the Internet, Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com.
Great. Well, it's a wonderful book, and it's amazing that you had time to put together all these recipes yourself. And congratulations on all your great work there in Omaha.